Kitchen with Miss Kelly. Today we're going to make some fried pork chops. So, stay tuned. Please remember before you begin to make sure all of your surfaces are cleaned and you have some fresh dishwater in case you drop something or you need to wash. So what you'll need is some seasoning salt, pepper, garlic powder, flour, oil, and of course the pork chops. So I have my oil already preheating at 350 degrees. Let's see. Yep, looks good. And here are my freshly washed pork chops. As you can see, pork chops come in different sizes. You can get different cuts. It's normal to have just a little blood. They've been washed twice. So now let's start to season. What I like to do is combine garlic powder and some seasoning salt directly on the pork chops. Just to help if I open it. And remember, with the seasoned salt, try not to be too heavy because you don't want your pork chops to be too salty. So I'm going to use my bare hands and I'm just going to put the seasoning on top. And here's the seasoned salt. I just like to have a few sprinkles on each pork chop. I kind of flip it over and do the same thing. Don't worry if it's not totally all the way on the pork chop, because what you're going to do is you're going to put it in flour. So now that the pork chops are seasoned, I'm going to move this to the side and I'm going to start with my flour mixture. So with the flour mixture, you should use probably a cup to a cup and a half depending on how many pork chops you have. Tonight I'm only making 4, so just kind of eyeball it. I will start off with a cup. I think that'll be enough to coat 4 pork chops. And in my flour batter, I like to put some black pepper. And then I kind of shake it up a little bit, or you can use a fork to blend. Since I didn't use a lot of seasoning on the pork chops, you can take a couple of sprinkles if you like. And you can put it directly in your flour mixture. Okay, that looks pretty good. And I'm going to mix it up. And while my oil is telling me that it's almost ready, I'm going to start adding the pork chops. And if you like, you can add 2 at a time if you have a nice sized container like this. And then, so I won't get my hands dirty, I like to put a lid on my top. Make sure it's secure, and I shake it up. Some people use plastic bags, some people use a paper bag. It kind of depends on you, on what you like to use. This is most convenient for me, so let's see how it went. Okay, so as you see, the pork chops are pretty much coated. If you need to, you can always take your fork or another utensil and make sure they're completely coated. And this kind of saves your hands from getting flour mixture on it. So I'm going to take 1 pork chop and I'm going to do a tester to see. I like to take a little piece if I can. There we go, just to see if the oil is hot.
Okay.
As you can see, the oil is nice and hot. The piece of pork chop is floating. So I'm going to continue with adding my 2 battered pork chops. Now, depending on how big of a pan you have, you may be able to add all 4 pork chops together, or you may be able to add possibly 3 or 2. Depends on how much room. For me, I think I can add all 4 pork chops. So as those continue to cook, I'm going to go ahead and add my other 2 to the flour mixture. This one's a little broken. It's okay, it's still going to be nice and delicious. I'm going to put the top back on and give it a quick shake. And then I'm going to add it to the other pork chops. Okay, so I've added the other 2 pork chops. And I like to let them cook at least 5 minutes on one side before I turn them to make sure that they can be a little golden brown before I flip them over. Make sure that your oil is enough to cover your pork chops, because if not, what'll happen is once you flip it, you won't have enough oil to cook it all the way through. So I say use 2 to 3 cups of oil and you should be okay. Now if you like to make more than 4 pork chops, then you would need more flour and a little more oil. And your pork chops should cook on medium high. I say if your cooker goes to 1 to 10, you should at least put it on a 7 or 8. So let's see, these have been cooking about 5 minutes. Let's see how they're turning out. Okay, you see that? It's turning nice and brown. That's what you want before you flip them, because you want to make sure you give the meat a chance to keep the coating on top of it, as well as cook thoroughly all the way through before you flip it. You want that one side to cook all the way. So since I added these 2 a little later, we're going to let those cook a little longer, and then we'll be right back. Okay, so now the other 2 pork chops are almost ready to turn. And I'd like to give a special shout out to my husband. He inspired me to make this delicious recipe that I am sharing with you. So let's continue to cook. Okay, so it should take about 20 minutes for your pork chops to cook, but you need to continue to watch them to make sure that they're evenly cooked on both sides. So I'm going to take the pork chops that I originally started with, and I'm going to flip them over again. They're cooking nice and delicious. Let's see about this one. This one is a little bit thicker, so it might take a little bit longer to cook. But as you see, your coating is still on. It's turning nice and golden brown. These are the 2 that I added a little bit later. So we're going to see how these go. Looks pretty good. Okay, that was not quite ready yet. So it's been almost 20 minutes, and our pork chops are looking nice and golden brown. So I'm going to start taking them out on a paper towel so they can drain before they're served. As you can see, they look fully cooked. You want to make sure you don't see any blood, anything bleeding from them. And don't forget to turn your oil off when you're done cooking. So this is our last one, so we're going to let them drain for a few minutes, and then we'll come back with the finished product. Okay, here you go, our delicious pork chops. So I hope you enjoyed this recipe, and this is a family favorite. My husband's going to be so happy this evening when he can get these pork chops. So thank you again, and please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Until next time.